Hello, and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from cyberspace, I'll be your host, Dave Trumbore. And joining me as always, he runs around in underwear, it's Sean Paul Ellis. How are you, you underwear wearing fiend?
David. I'm doing well. How about
I
yourself?
wish we were doing a video cast right now, because he's literally just running around in underwear, ladies and gentlemen. It's a
I
delight.
am.
He
Why would
is?
you not?
Yeah,
Look, I am in the confines of my own home.
yeah.
I'm gonna get comfortable.
No, do what you
I'm gonna
want.
get comfortable.
Yeah, good stuff.
I'm uncomfortable.
Ooh, and completing our trio. His brain's overloading, and it has a chocolate coating. It's Matt Barron. How's it going, buddy?
I'm good.
He's got chocolate coating, everyone. So we got Naked Sean running
Delicious.
around. Near Naked Sean. He's not an ever near,
Yeah.
as far as I know. And chocolate coated Matt Barron. This is a delightful little episode. We're obviously talking Freakazoid, because that's about as random an intro as we can have. And this is about as random a show as we've watched so far. I don't know how the guys feel
I
about
want
it
to.
yet,
I
but
want to.
jump in.
Hey, Dave, Matt. Since
Yeah.
this show is completely based on non sequiturs, at any point during this episode, if somebody just wants to non sequitur and just start talking about whatever else is on their mind and something completely different, I'll allow it.
Oh, fuck, that's going to drive me insane.
I'll support it.
I'm kind of OCD-ish for folks that don't know me, so that will literally drive me insane. We're gonna watch
You know
the
what you
show
have to do
in
now, Baron.
Relaxovision. How's that sound?
No.
Scream. No, we're gonna watch in Relaxovision.
Oh, man.
It's gonna be great. Before Sean starts his non sequiturs, I'm gonna give you guys a brief history of Freakazoid, which you may not be familiar with. I'm actually kind of surprised by. I don't know, this was a big thing to me in the mid 90s. I thought more people liked it. Apparently not so much. So if you're not familiar with it, Freakazoid was an American animated TV series created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, names you may recognize, for the Kids WB programming block on the WB, the kind of defunct turned into CWWB. This was an Amblin Entertainment and Warner Brothers Animation production. Also involved Steven Spielberg, which was kind of fun. It was the third animated series that involved Mr. Spielberg. This was kind of during the late 80s and early 90s when kids animation was definitely making a big comeback. So I mentioned Bruce Timm earlier. You probably know him, one of the big players in DC Animated Universe. This was his creation, but he actually intended it to be kind of a straightforward superhero action adventure with a little bit of comic flavoring. But Spielberg came in and was just like, nope, we're going to take the guy that wrote Animaniacs. His name's Tom Ruegger. And we're just going to turn this into a crazy bonkers comedy, which is exactly what happened. I don't think it would have done, well, it didn't do well, let's say that. It didn't do well in its original run. It developed kind of a cult following and, just kind of a cult hit in later years. But during its original run, numbers weren't so great. So it's hard to say whether or not that was a good decision or not. The styling of the show is just, it's surreal. There's slapstick, they break the fourth wall a lot. There's a little bit of satire, but there's a lot more kind of the parody, and we can talk about kind of the differences between those two. There's a lot of pop culture references, but they were specific to pretty much the time of the mid-90s when this ran. The series was one of the first to debut on the new Kids WB Saturday morning block, September 9th, 1995. It lasted for 2 seasons, 24 episodes, finishing up on June in 1997. And like I said,
That's pretty reasonable.
it's not
That's
bad.
Pretty,
I mean, in
that's pretty respectable.
24 episodes, I think that's pretty good. And honestly, like, these shows were so crazy, they probably just burned through all their goodwill because it seemed like they did not give a shit. They just did whatever they wanted to do, which is why I love these shows. And once the reruns showed up on Cartoon Network a couple of years later, that's when people started to kind of like pay attention to it. It kind of came into its own in that time when like Family Guy was being revived on Cartoon Network, and there were just some more kind of bonkers shows on that cable network. So I'm glad that it found a place, and I'm glad we get to watch it again. But to tell you what the show is actually kind of about, I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and I'll stop my rambling.
Thank you. So the title character in here, Freakazoid, has an alter ego that is a 16-year-old boy named Dexter Douglas. He's a high school student. He seems to be pretty poor with the ladies, but Freakazoid seems to continually, I don't know, kind of quest after like makeouts or kisses
Boy,
on the
does he.
cheek.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I guess this is what's interesting to me, and I know that we've kind of done like internet timelines before, especially when we discussed Reboot. But I mean, this show came out in 1995. Dexter Douglas gained his powers from a computer bug, which sucked him into the internet and sucked him into the computer and gave him all of the information that is on the internet at that time.
Right.
We've talked about this. Like, commercial internet had only been around for like a couple years at that point. So like, he gained a bunch of like AOL chat rooms, a bunch of spinny GIFs, angelfire.com,
Yeah.
GeoCities,
Some
like,
cat pictures.
He
the
gained
very first
the
cat pictures.
garbage of the internet
Yeah.
that like we are trying to still now bury.
Well, dude, it's no wonder his brain was fried. I mean, good lord, cramming all that junk in there.
Well, I mean, I guess the point that I want to make with this is that there really wasn't enough. Like, at that point in time, you could still write down a majority of the IP addresses for the internet on a piece of paper and pass it to a person.
Right.
And like, it wasn't ridiculous. Like, ugh. So, whatever. That was the best Matt Barron laugh ever. He has, along with the ability to have all the information that's on the internet, which comes across in all these pop culture references, he has enhanced strength, endurance. He has speed. There's no sanity in terms of like what he does. Like it bounces
no
around
rhyme or
so
reason.
much. Yeah, like, I mean, I don't have like an attention problem at all. And I was sitting here watching this, paying attention to the show, and I was like, oh my God, maybe I do now have an attention problem.
It gave
from watching
all
this
the kids,
program.
ADD.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Ugh. It's like those shows that when you start up and they're just like, this show contains flashing lights, it may cause epilepsy, and you're like, I'm fine, and then it starts flashing, and you're just like, oh no, I think something's wrong with me.
Oh, no, now I definitely have epilepsy.
Yeah. Thank you for the disclaimer. Now I have that problem.
Yeah.
So he continues to fight on the side of the good and the just. And so, I mean, I guess he's a redeemable character in that sense. But along with being somewhat redeemable, I know I've mentioned this before, is that how important the theme songs are, at least how important I posit the theme songs to be. This show actually really does have a great theme song.
Absolutely. And before we even get into that, I just want to mention this show was actually nominated for a Daytime Emmy in 1998.
What?
Yeah, based on an outstanding original song from composer Julie Bernstein and lyricist composer John P. McCann. I don't think it was for the title song. Wikipedia says it was. Yes, they actually won a Daytime Emmy in 96 for the original song, and they were nominated again in 98 for a song called Invisibo. But yeah, this main theme won a Daytime Emmy, which just goes to show you how shitty and worthless Emmys are. So, that being said, I'll turn it back over to
If you
Sean.
stand on top of the pile of shit, you're still the king, right?
Exactly. But now I'm going to turn
And
it
you're
over to
still
you guys.
You're still standing on shit at that point.
Hey, at least
so
you're standing,
not that great.
kids. At least you're still standing.
Well, that's
All
why
right.
the daytime Emmys are shit.
Matt, I'm going to do this reading. Would you mind helping me out?
I would love to help you, Sean.
Wonderful. Super teen extraordinaire
Freakazoid,
runs around in underwear.
Freakazoid.
Rescues Washington, D.C.
Freakazoid.
unless there's something better on TV.
Freakazoid.
His brain's overloading. It has a chocolate coating. Textbook case for Sigmund Freud.
Freakazoid.
Check out Dexter Douglas, nerd computer ace, when surfing on the internet and was zapped into cyberspace. He turned into a freakazoid. He's strong and super quick. He drives the villains crazy because he's a lunatic. His home base is the Freakalair.
Freakazoid. Fricassee.
Floyd the barber cuts his hair.
Freakazoid. Chimpanzee.
Rides around in the Freakmobile.
Freakazoid. Freakazoo.
Hopes to make a movie deal.
Freaka me. Freaka you.
He's here to save the nation, so stay tuned to this station. If not, we'll be unemployed.
Freakazoid, Freakazoid, Freakazoid.
Wonderful.
Very well done.
Wonderful.
Applause, applause. Very well done. Sean, I am excited to get into this theme song conversation with you and Matt because there are a number of things that I love about it. But I know you have an ongoing theory about how theme songs kind of set up the potential for the show and give the viewers some information. So how do you feel about this particular Emmy-winning theme song?
I mean, I feel actually pretty good about it. I mean, I have to amend this, or at least caveat this and say that like the promise that the theme song makes is in no way indicative of whether or not you're going to enjoy the show.
Right.
It's just whether or not the theme song actually delivers on the promise. And in this instance, yes, it absolutely does. I mean, if there was ever any case of like if you were ever doubting what show you're watching, you heard the name at least 20 times during the theme song.
Courtesy of Matt Barron.
You know it's Freakazoid.
Yes.
Yes, you know it's Freakazoid. I mean, it bounces around so quickly that, I mean, like, it does a great job of mapping the style of the show
Definitely.
and the non sequitur nature into the actual theme song. And so, in that case, yes, I think it delivered on its promise of being something completely batshit insane.
Yeah, and I love the visual way they jump around too. So, like you said, their lyrics kind of jump around from place to place. You don't know what's coming next. Visually, they just paint exactly what the lyrics are saying, but it does it in such a very bold, colorful, and crazy way. I love that. I love the just intercuts, the smash cuts from one thing to the next.
The chimpanzee interstitial?
That absolutely killed me. I remember the first time I watched that because like it sets your brain up. You hear Freakazoid, 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 Freakazoid over and over again, and out of nowhere comes this fucking chimpanzee, and it is a live action chimp. At least in the first episode, it's a live action chimp that just shows up and he's like jumping up and down on a stump. That killed my brain as like the 12-year-old me. Just killed it dead, flatlined it, and I love that moment because. Just a personal touch to this. This is something my brother and I used to watch, and he was only like, probably like 6 or 7 at the time, and I was around 12. And me and him could sit down and watch it, and he would giggle and laugh at things that he found funny. I would laugh at stuff that I found funny. It was a show that we could watch together, and we both absolutely died whenever that chimpanzee came on. So I just love that.
Chimpanzee came on.
Yeah, hilarious. Monkeys.
I mean, and to deliver on the promise of the chimpanzee, there's like a lot of I want to say bathroom humor that's in this show, but it's specifically like it seems like it's and toilet humor and bathroom humor isn't correct in saying this. There's like a lot of times where like characters or people will just have like a toilet seat like around their head.
Yeah, he's being literal, like actual toilet humor. I think one of his weaknesses is poo gas as well. He has an aversion to poo gas.
I'm sorry, you said what?
Poo gas. Poo gas.
Poo gas.
Poo gas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear.
No, we're talking poo gas.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's
all right.
Yeah.
Was there any moment in the theme song when you guys heard the rides around in the Freakmobile where you were like, oh, this is getting dirty?
Ooh, I have to mention. This is my second point that I have to mention.
This is getting dirty.
This is getting good. I remember my mom disliking this show, which of course made me like it even more. I was like a 12-year-old kid because she was like, it's kind of funny. I don't like when he says "freaka me, freaka you," and then she would just like walk out of the room, and I thought that was hysterical. I thought that was as funny as the show itself. She was just like, I don't like when he says "freaka me, freaka you." Great, good mom.
You should have just put on some smooth R&B, like some Silky, like in the background, and just like put on his one hit "Freak Me Baby,"
and put a bright red onesie on with an F and an exclamation point.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been fun. Good stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this theme song to me, like, I remembered it before I even looked it up. It was just one of those things that stuck with me, and I just love that it sets up. To your point, I love how it sets up the nature of the show. That is just nuts. It's energetic. It doesn't always make sense. There's going to be different kinds of comedy that you may or may not like. There's going to be a lot of non sequiturs. I love the fact that this show it's all animated, but then they throw in these weird cuts of like old timey footage that's like live action, like the three German dancers that just start having like a slap fight in the middle of dancing. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Speaking of non
Yeah.
sequiturs, I mean shit like that just like blew my mind when I was a kid because it just made no sense and I didn't know how to handle it, and I loved it, and I still love it.
I don't know if because I mean Animaniacs and Tiny Toons
Yes.
all came before this show, and I don't know if it was just that like I loved both of their theme songs. I don't know if this was something where like I maybe I didn't get it, or maybe I just didn't like it as much as I enjoyed Tiny Toons and Animaniacs. But like, I know I watched the show a couple times on TV, and then it became one of the shows that like when it came on, when I was like, because I must have been like 15 when this came on, like I'd see it come up and I'd be like, oh, I gotta change the channel. Like I gotta put on Saved. I gotta put on Saved by the Bell. Like I gotta
See, maybe it was
gotta
just
see
the
what those
wrong
kids up
time
at
for you.
Bateside are
Maybe it was
doing.
just you were just too old for it at that point. And for me, it was like the exact perfect time because my brain
Okay.
didn't know what the hell it was doing. So like this show made perfect sense for it because nothing else made sense. So the fact that this show was so insane, I was just like, yeah, I can get behind that. Nothing makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. How you doing over there, Wheezy? Did you like this show?
No, you know what?
No,
It was
no.
all right. I mean, I think it was in about 7th grade when this show was on
Yeah,
TV.
dude, we're
So,
the same age.
yeah, I know, but at any rate, no. I mean, I'm kind of in Sean's boat. Like, I watched a little bit of Animaniacs, but Freakazoid for some reason, like the Jerry Lewis shit
Yeah,
was just
we'll
like,
get to that. That
you know,
I can
and it's
understand that.
and just like stuff like that. I'm just like,
That's valid.
know,
That is a
can't
very
really do this so
valid.
much.
Because I'm not a fan of Jerry Lewis. I do like slapstick, but his particular brand with the lady and all that, I never got into that. That was always grating and irritating. Freakazoid does that a lot. I don't know if it fades over the course of the series, but he does it quite a bit in the early goings. So I think the voice actors were trying to figure out the character, figure out how kind of crazy he is. But I love the fact that the creators and the writers and even the animators, they just kind of let him go. Like there's no restrictions. They just let him go, man. I can picture the voice actors in the booth just going insane, just doing anything and everything they can think of, and then they're like, all right, we'll slap it together later and just write it up as it goes, and we'll animate whatever you just did because it made zero sense. And I feel like that's reflected in the animation too, because this character, like Sean mentioned with his powers, he can kind of do anything. He's almost like a plastic man at times. He can change size, shape. He can zip around like a little lightning bolt. He can jump up on top of things. Sometimes he's super strong. It's just there's no limits to him. He can kind of do whatever he wants. But he's also insane. So that's his only limit, is that he can't actually harness his powers to do anything worthwhile because he's fucking nuts. Do you want to talk about some of the other characters? We've already kind of talked about Freakazoid. Do you want to talk about like his alter ego, Dexter, a little bit? Are you interested in him at all? Do you guys have any take on him?
Yeah, I mean, like he just like I guess I kind of resent the fact that like they made Dexter out to be like this total nerd who like used computers and like couldn't do anything else, and I mean, as being somebody who works with computers every day, like, I mean, I don't know. It was a weird stereotype, but I mean, I get the time it like in the 90s,
Right.
like in the mid 90s, like when computers were becoming like a household thing, like it makes sense.
And the internet too,
Like,
because the internet was like this
and
great
the
big
internet.
unknown. So
Because of the internet.
the end. Do you know how he actually got his powers though? Because it wasn't just like he didn't like hack into something and get zapped. Do you remember how he got his powers? I don't know if we saw it in the show or just quickly in the intro sequence.
Well, I watched the first 2 episodes, and they never kind of delved into that. Like in the first episode, they just kind of assume that like you've watched the theme song, you're
everything.
like get ready for everything that's happening.
you've watched the theme song, you're 100% caught up.
Yeah, just like the 80s shows that we watched. But I don't remember, like maybe these are out of sequence, or maybe there was an intro one that we couldn't find, but it's basically Dexter's at his computer. I don't remember 100% what he's doing. I think he's like typing up a paper or something, and his cat walks across the keyboard and types in just
always
this,
the fault. It's always
it's always
the fault
the
of
cat.
the cat.
The cats have always been connected to the internet since at least Freakazoid. The cat walks across the keyboard and it punches in a seemingly random series of codes, and then Dexter gets pissed, shoves the cat off the keyboard, and goes to hit the delete button, and that zaps him into cyberspace where he becomes Freakazoid. That's his origin story. Cats plus the internet equals Freakazoid, and I love it. And you guys hate it. You got to remember, though, this was before that was a cliche. Or at least right around the time when it was starting to jump the shark to become a cliche. But it was. I mean, we're talking 20 years ago almost for this. You know?
Damn it.
I'm not arguing with you.
No.
I mean,
Well, you should be,
for the time that. Yeah. I mean, for the time that this came out, like, it was accurate. Like, you know, people were starting to kind of parody, you know, people who use computers all day long. Like this was the thing. This was the stereotype that people had created in the media about people who use computers.
Yeah, I could see that. I think they parodied way more other stuff from the superhero genre. So, I mean, even in the first episode alone, guys, we're going to be jumping all over the place because non sequitur Sean is in the house. So we're just going to be jumping all over. But even
I'm trying to stay true to this show.
I know we do it anyway, so who cares? But yeah, in the first episode, there's like the narrator, and he basically says something about, he introduces this villain, and he's like, if only there was a hero who could stop him, normally it would be this guy. And they show like a silhouette of the very well-known at that point Batman from Batman the Animated Series. The white triangle eyes with the all black silhouette of his cape and the cowl, and he's holding up a villain. And the narrator says, you know, this hero could stop him, but he's on another network. And then they just cut over. And I love shit like that.
That was hilarious.
That was so good.
And they do stuff like that constantly, but it's blended in with a lot of this slapstick, toilet humor, Jerry Lewis type stuff that I can understand why it would turn some people off. You know. Did you guys have any other like favorite characters in the, or at least characters that were interesting to you if you weren't a big fan of the show? So we'll say you don't like Freakazoid, you don't like the...
I definitely did. Baron, did you have one?
Actually, you know, I kind of liked Cosgrove, just because he was, you know, kind of a funny stereotype, like, you know, your standard animated, like, cop with the huge eyebrows that, like, cover his actual eye sockets, junk like that. But he just had, like, a couple, like, funny moments. Like, I was watching kind of like a clip compilation, and he actually, like, outs Freakazoid, you know, as Dexter to Steph,
right?
And Freakazoid gets all pissed, and he's like, you know, you weren't supposed to say anything, and he's like, well, I just wanted to be clear that it's totally obvious that you're Dexter, and we're going to save your family. And that cracked me up, just like the deadpan, like, I mean, everybody knows that, right? It was just hilarious.
No, Cosgrove is awesome. I'm a big fan of him. Sean, were you a fan of him too?
Yes, that was actually my thing was so in the first two episodes. Or the two episodes that I watched, I didn't see Cosgrove interact with any other characters that were on the show other than Freakazoid.
Right.
And I was curious if Cosgrove was like a manifestation of Freakazoid's head, like of his insanity, and Cosgrove acted like the justice and / like moral compass of Freakazoid.
Okay, I'm going to follow that theory too. Follow that theory through, because to let people know what Cosgrove does, like Matt said, he's kind of the stout, very heavy-lidded cop, but like the what's the word I'm looking for?
So speaking of stouts, did you know that it's International Stout Day today?
Ooh, delicious! I had a lager earlier, so that's not
non sequitur number one.
Yeah. I wish I had a stout right now. Speaking of stout, Cosgrove is stout.
You were saying about Cosgrove.
Yeah. So okay, he's voiced by Ed Asner. I feel like that just the voice lets you know what this character looks like, because he looks like Ed Asner in a cop's uniform. He's just kind of like
very
this dumpy, fatherly,
very like
stout old guy, and he shows up randomly. He distracts Freakazoid. He's like, in the first one, he's like, "Hey Freakazoid, you want to go get a mint?" And as you're watching, you're just like, what the fuck does that even mean? Freakazoid's like, yeah, all right. As he's like trying to go save the world, or save the city at least, he's like, yeah, let's go get a mint. So they show up at this, what was the name of the restaurant? It was just like the mint shop or something strange.
It was Make Mine Mint.
Make
Mine Mint.
Well done. Yeah, so they just have these like sidebars, these like side adventures that you don't really see a lot. You see the beginning and then you see the end of it. And then Cosgrove is just kind of like, hey, thanks for coming over for that mint. You should probably get back to saving the city now. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I should do that. So saying that he's like his moral compass or his sense of justice or even like a spirit of rationality, I can't buy it because he is almost like a distracting influence on him because he shows up, he's like, hey, you want to go see a monkey riding a unicycle? And Freakazoid's like, do I? So he always shows up for shit like that and then puts him
Hey,
back
Freakazoid,
on the
go
track.
to the Fall Harvest Festival? Do I?
Do I?
Like,
I love Cosgrove though, mostly because it's Ed Asner. He does interact with other characters though throughout the show. So he actually interacts.
Okay.
Yeah, like that conversation I mentioned was Cosgrove, Freakazoid, and Steph.
Yeah, and Steph is Dexter's kind of on again, off again girlfriend, depending on which episode you watch. Yeah, but I watched one with Norm Abrams, which, okay, fuck, the fact that Norm Abrams is an animated character in a TV show with a superhero, that is enough for me. If you don't know who Norm Abrams is, definitely look him up. I could watch, what is it, Old Yankee Workshop or New Yankee Workshop? I could watch that for just hours, just by itself.
New Yankee Workshop.
New Yankee Workshop. And the fact that he is animated and kind of a heroic character in a superhero series, I just love it, man. I don't know. It's so random that I can't help but find this very endearing. I love it. So yeah, Cosgrove talks to him too. Did you have any like favorite villains, or at least of the ones you watched? Did any kind of stand out? Because we saw at least 3, I think, 3 or 4, just in the first 2 episodes.
I saw 3, and
Yeah.
I liked Candlejack.
I love Candlejack. Be careful when you say his name, because he will show up. So a little late for us,
Wow.
but Baron, just don't say his name. You should be fine.
Oops.
Yeah, we're screwed.
Call him Candle J.
Candle J. We'll call him CJ.
CJ. But yeah, I thought Candlejack was a lot of fun. I kind of thought for that second episode, they kind of introduced like this like really long voiceover Deus Ex Machina to like wrap up his interaction with Candlejack about like Freakazoid building this trap and like how could CJ have known that he was doing this thing, and then he ensnares them, and then it was done, and then everything was over. And I was like, well, that seemed very simple and well packaged with a little ribbon on it. So, all right.
Yeah, but
I
to
don't know.
me, it's not. All right, I don't know how to explain this, but to me, it's not the stories that I'm not looking for a conflict and then a resolution in a story. I'm just looking for wall-to-wall insanity from 1 minute to the next, because that's what this show is. Like, if you want the regular superhero type stuff with a story that, has some intrigue and stuff, great, there's plenty of stuff out there for that. This is a parody of that, so they flip that around. They tie stuff up neatly because they've done so much crazy shit for 99% of their time that they just wrap it up at the end and are done with it. But
I guess that's maybe the difference of opinion that we have with this, is that like you thought it was a parody that was successful. I thought this was a parody that was like it really kind of turned out lukewarm or mediocre.
Okay.
I'm in Sean's boat.
Fair enough. We're gonna sink that boat. I'm gonna go get some more rope.
We're in boat mediocre right now. So
Mediocre boats.
Mediocre boats. Yeah, it didn't, like, the things that were supposed to be a parody for me in this show, like, this was very early on in the DC animated universe. So, it was really only Batman, the animated series. And so I guess just to, like, and if I'm to take Batman, TAS, and like Animaniacs and say that like the contrast or like the yin to yang is Freakazoid, I don't know. It missed the mark for me at points. It missed the mark when I was a kid watching this, like at 15, and there were moments that I saw this and I was just kind of like, okay, okay, like there were moments like you had with like when you saw the chimpanzee where like you just kind of like blurted out laughing,
Right.
That like you really enjoyed. Like there were those like single moments, and I had very single moments of enjoyment with this show.
Fair enough.
Holistically, it just didn't hit, it just didn't land for me.
I gotta ask you guys this: are you a fan of The Tick? Both?
Yeah, I'm a fan of The Tick. I do not remember watching it that much. I can tell you that it maybe only saw like 4 episodes the whole way through, but I thought the style of humor was, slightly different less like slapsticky.
Yeah, sure. It definitely was, but it was. Well, Sean, were you a fan of it? Because I'm curious to see where you kind of lie on this one.
I'm kind of middle of the road on the Tick. I
Really?
watched
Okay,
a
that
lot
makes
of it,
sense
but
then.
I like there were some things that I was like, oh yeah, I enjoyed this, and I liked the grounded nature of the Tick.
Yeah.
Grounded?
I particularly liked, here comes a non sequitur. I particularly liked the superhero Deflator
Oh,
Mouse.
Deflator Mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
because it
love
was
Sewer Urchin,
Batman.
but that's just me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
That's
and
the
that's
that's
just
a
such
satire
a
over a parody.
hilarious
Yeah.
thing to me.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
love Deflator Mouse. Chairhead Chippendale. That's another one we'll have to
Yeah.
revisit in the future. But that was kind of a little bit, a slightly more mature version of Freakazoid. But I can see them kind of being in the same universe. So at least you guys are consistent that you got kind of lukewarm feelings for the Tick and for Freakazoid. Because I see them, I paint them with a similar brush. I love
Okay.
both of them.
All right. I mean,
think- Yeah.
to your point, like these came out in and around the same time. I
Right.
mean,
To
I mean,
me, it was like, and I love Batman the Animated Series through and through. I could watch that over and over and over
Right.
again. And one day we'll talk about that show on here. But
oof.
that's going to be a good one. But it was just, it took itself so seriously most of the time, which was just the tone of it, and that was fine. It was great for what it was. I loved the freedom and the energy and the insanity of Freakazoid. I like that contrast. Maybe not a point for point contrast or comparison to Batman, but as a tone, one was fairly not restrained, but at least ordered and serious and dark, and the other was just zany and childish and free. And I love both sides of those things.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like the other villains though too. So Candlejack was fun because he was he was basically a boogeyman, but he was almost like he was an ineffectual boogeyman. He didn't really do much. If you said his name, if you said Candlejack, like, oh, I don't know, if you're a bunch of kids sitting around a campfire telling a story about Candlejack, he shows up, and he's just kind of like this floating scarecrow ghost-looking character, and he just loops you in his like line of rope, and you just float behind him, and he just takes you away to do whatever. And he just keeps showing up because people keep saying his name. I love that idea that it was like a villain that really didn't do anything. He just kept showing up because everybody around him was stupid. I loved it. I think people
Okay.
still do like him. There's a lot of cosplay and stuff for Candlejack. Did you guys like the Lobe at all? Any feelings about
Yeah,
him?
he was. I did. I
Okay,
did
good.
enjoy him.
Good.
He was fun.
You know, tell folks about the Lobe if they're not familiar with him.
Yeah, and he's just this super genius brain that just tries to continually like trap. And in the one episode that I saw, he was trying to dissect Freakazoid, and it was just really funny, like because he has him like tied down to this like table, and he's like, we're gonna cut open his head and see what makes him tick. And so he cuts open Freakazoid's head, and inside there's a ticking time bomb. And then Freakazoid pops out, and he's like, see? He said, you said you were going to see what's in my head and see what ticks. And what was inside was a ticking time bomb. And now it's a bomb. Like, yeah, I was just like, okay, like you've now over-explained this joke.
Yeah,
like,
which
1,000
I found
fold.
hilarious.
But I mean, like,
Yeah.
it was silly in that sense. I just, like, there were just some things about it where I was like, oh, right, like, I get it.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious
I-
to find like what types of humor, like what kinds of humor or what moments made you guys laugh and what moments made you kind of cringe and want to change the channel. I can understand the
Well, like
Jerry Lewis stuff.
The Jerry Lewis stuff. Some of the stuff that was, I guess, like very relevant in like pop culture or like the news during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the first episode, there's like this. So to set the scene for the like part of the first episode, since everything's kind of broken up into like these smaller chunks.
Yeah, it's like a variety.
The villain called Cave Guy has taken over Harry Connick High School. There's a dance that evening. He attacks. There's a newscaster that is outside, and he just says like, he just goes, "This is a story as big as OJ," and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
no,
that's a
I
little
don't-
rough. I
this
mean,
isn't-
that's a
this
problem with
this isn't anywhere.
topical
This isn't
humor.
anywhere close to.
No.
This is a comical caveman who every once in a while just goes, "I subscribe to the New York."
So that I
Or-
think was funny because the first time you're introduced, it's the first episode. you're introduced to this lumbering caveman that's just like going through the streets of Washington D.C. and just like flipping cars and smashing police cars. And then it cuts to him, and he's just like, "Oh, I subscribe to the New Yorker," and it's just you don't see shit like that coming. So I mean, if that tickles your funny bone, then great.
But Dave,
if not, then I can understand not liking it. Yeah.
Yeah. With all this heat, how will I escape to the Hamptons?
It still makes me laugh.
Jesus.
Like shit like that kind of made me laugh because I don't know.
See, that kind of stuff was funny to me too,
Right.
but like some of the literal stuff was like
Yeah.
really not funny. Like you know, cringeworthy, like at the end, like after he rescues everybody at the dance, like I think actually it was Steph like came up to him and said, "Call me later," and she, as soon as she walks out of frame, Freakazoid starts screaming her name. And it's
Yeah.
like, you know, like calling her, and I'm just like, all right, too literal, not funny.
Yeah, stuff like
Yeah.
that I get, and that was the annoying part of it. And I think that maybe, I don't know if that softened or probably just got worse over the course of the series, but I think that was again the voice actor trying to like find the character, but also I just love that they were just being insane with it. But yeah, I can totally understand why that would turn people off, because there's a lot of moments like that when Freakazoid's fighting Cave Guy at one point. He just like leaps on top of the guy's head and is just like perched up there like a cat, and he just starts shouting like Jerry Lewis. He like starts doing this song.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna like attempt to read
So
it, but
that was I guess that was kind of my problem with some of, at least like the episodes that I watched, is that it seemed like there were a lot of times where like they didn't really have much that they wanted to put in the episode regarding like content, so they just let Paul Rudd like scream his fucking head off.
Yeah.
Like, they were just like, the whole first part of the first episode about the weather report is just Paul Rudd fucking, as Freakazoid, fucking screaming about shit. Like,
That part was hilarious
See,
to me.
now that's
though.
what I think is funny.
screaming
Is
nonstop.
Marin
And
loves
I,
that.
like, it was funny for like 2 seconds, but then the bit went on, and I was like, okay, like, wrap this up.
Dude,
like,
do you want to talk about a bit
you-
going on? Can we talk about the third part of that first episode? Do you remember that bit about the hand man?
Yeah, so the hand. Oh god. Man. So they did this whole thing like at the end about like it's Freakazoid's continuing quest to find the perfect sidekick.
Right. Well done.
Sidekick.
Well done.
And so he has this sidekick named Handman, which is just he has drawn he's drawn eyes on his hand.
Yep.
And he's made it into like a kind of like a little hand puppet.
Yep.
Which just made me think of like the like South Park, like Jennifer Lopez like bit, which I thought was actually perfectly on South Park. You know, but like man, like it kind of just dragged on like forever and ever, and then there was a little bit of action where like he finally used Handman to like punch the Lobe and like kind of foil his plans to like get, you know, to be captured. And so I mean, like that was fun, and that was interesting. It was just like, you know, there were like just those like ventriloquist, like those bad ventriloquist bits where he's just like, watch me drink this glass of water, and he's like drinking a glass of water, and like, you know, the hand is like still talking, but then it's like as he's drinking, it's gargling water. Like, you know, you can clearly tell that it's just his hand, and like the Lobe's not buying it. I guess that's what was actually funny to me, was the Lobe wasn't buying it for like 1 second.
Yes.
He called him on his bullshit.
See, and that is one of the greater things about the show too, is that everybody in this world knows that Freakazoid is fucking insane. Everybody else kind of like is the straight man to him, even if you're the Lobe who's just walking around and you're just a giant exposed brain. Like, they know that he's insane, and they kind of play off of stuff like that. So they call him out. I liked stuff like that, especially with the Lobe. He has very just kind of like dry delivery, a dry sense of humor, and he always just gets beat up, but he keeps coming back for more. I liked stuff like that. But then Sean mentioned that there was a little bit of action in that scene. That's literally only the first minute. For the next 7 minutes,
Yeah.
you watch Freakazoid's Handman meet the Hand Girl, I guess, which is just his
Yeah.
other hand, and then you watch their lives grow.
They get
together
married in Vegas,
in
and then
like
they
a
go on a
Scottish ceremony
honeymoon,
or
and
something.
like
Yeah.
there's that weird shot of like both hands like resting like daintily on a pillow, and the
Yeah.
only thing I thought in the back of my head was like, are they gonna hand fuck?
Yeah,
Like
pretty much.
what's next? And like they start making out, and in like the back of my head, I was like, this is so fucking hot. I was just like, I
Jesus.
was like, cops, and like it just continued, and then he's just like, oh, what a happy ending. Unlike some other people, then he looks down at his feet, and you see that his feet are like. I was like, all right, that was a good way to like flip the idea. I will give the writers a lot of credit.
Dude, just
There are
for
a lot of
going
things
through
that, like, they
110% with that,
oh
just
my
to
god,
follow through.
there's so much stuff that they pivot off
Yeah.
of in this in terms of ideas, which is fucking great. I don't know what it is. For me, just a lot of those jokes, like they either went too long or they just fell flat. And I just at that point, like like they had already committed to the gag,
Right.
and like they weren't gonna back down,
No.
you know. And so you're just kind of watching somebody else go on this journey where you're just like, oh my god, like I had to sit through this whole fucking thing, like all right, you know. I mean, it's but I mean, to your point again, there were those like single moments that were like really really entertaining that were in there, those like little golden nuggets, but I didn't see them all the time.
See, and I caught in that too, like Saturday Night Live or any other type of like variety shows where you can watch Saturday Night Live for an hour and you might find 48 minutes of it just almost unbearable. But occasionally there's just like a short or a skit or any kind of performance that you're just like, yes, we'll be talking about that for the next week at least. And I kind of
Right.
liken it to that. Everything is not going to hit. It's going to hit differently for different people. I love the fact that they just were insane. They were free with it. They won 110%. And then they
Sure.
broke it up. Like in the second one, you guys watched the second episode too, correct?
Yes.
They completely
Yes.
took a left turn with Toby Danger in Doomsday Bet. And that was just,
Yeah. What the?
I don't even
fuck
remember
was
that
going-
from the show, to be honest with you. Matt, I
So-
know you're a
so
fan of
before,
like Venture
before we
Brothers and-
before we transition over to this, I want to say that there was one character that whenever he showed up, we were talking about cringeworthy shit. This character made me fucking cringe every fucking time, and didn't say anything. Was just fucking weird as hell, and that was well, I'm gonna screw up the name, but Emmett Neverend.
Emmett Neverend. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Okay, we can talk about these two characters. There's Emmett Neverend and there's Waylon Jeepers. I was actually going to throw them in now, but so let's do that anyway.
All right. Well, I mean, like Waylon Jeepers, like I don't want to spend too much time on either of them, but like Waylon Jeepers, because I think the parody of, oh my god, of Johnny Quest was entertaining and unexpected,
Right.
but like Waylon Jeepers shows up and he something about I don't know. It was very weird. That didn't creep me out. This Emmett Neverend looks like a guy who is he is in the process of giving himself a hernia while taking a shit.
Yeah, it's
like,
he's very strained. He's a very strained gentleman.
Just like strained neck veins, like a big grin with like a fucking beak nose.
You need to
and
find
just
his like any gifs or anything because they need to be all over Tumblr just to haunt your dreams.
spindly fucking wire hair, and it like to see him walk across like any part of the show, I was like, oh my god,
It looks
I'm
like an
uncomfortable. Like,
early Matt Groening drawing or something like that. It's,
wanted a fucking crying game shower for myself like,
Oh my
immediately.
god. See, I thought his face was
Fuck this.
hilarious.
I thought it was hilarious too, and you see it like
I
every
was
episode.
so creeped out.
You see him in the title
Yeah.
sequence, and then he's like an Easter egg. You have to try to find him in the episode because he just pops up.
He's
in
like,
random
he's like the
creepy
aliens
places.
in South Park. Like they're always there.
yeah.
It's just
He's got to find him.
fucking.
Emmett Neverend. Oh man, I'm gonna let Matt talk a little bit about Toby Danger. I have a feeling that he
Please.
liked Toby Danger, or at least wants to talk about it, because I know he's a fan of Venture Brothers, who have a similar spin on Johnny Quest. So Matt, what did you think of Toby Danger in Doomsday Bet?
You know, I mean, it was actually. I got the Venture Brothers. I mean, well, obviously Venture Brothers was like 10 years
Yeah,
later,
exactly.
but the Johnny Quest thing, like I straight up watched Johnny Quest as a
Yeah, me
kid,
too.
but I also thought it was like occupied this sort of like weird semi-educational cartoon meets action cartoon. So like anything that makes a pun of that just like really hits for me because I have such memories of Johnny Quest as a kid.
Right.
So like, I mean, I just kind of thought like it was baseline funny for me, like compared to like Freakazoid in general, which like just hits or doesn't. So, I mean, a lot more of it was much funnier.
Yeah, I loved it. I wanted to actually look and kind of dig in to see
What the hell were you laughing at, Sean?
He's just Emmett never.
No, no, because I wanted to, like, is there like a part, Matt? Is there like a part of you like when you were growing up that you were just like, I wish I was Johnny Quest. Like, I wish I had like
Who
like
doesn't
a
wish that?
like a hunky adult babysitter.
Well, maybe not that so much.
A best friend who's a minority, and like a super science dad.
Dude, they have hover
You know,
bikes.
only-
They fight frogmen, giant metal spiders. They have Asian stereotype arch
No,
nemesis.
Dave, hold on.
I'm very
Matt,
excited.
what were you going to answer?
I was going to say only the new Adventures of Johnny Quest when there was much cooler technology. Because, like, the
All right,
60s Adventures of Johnny Quest, I'm like, but all of that sucks.
Has all the Cold
Like,
War
I
tech.
don't-
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so it's got to be new Johnny Quest. For
Buddy,
me, but
we're gonna tag team. We're gonna do old and new adventures of Johnny Quest one episode because I'm a huge fan of Johnny Quest. I love it. Old and new. I like both.
I was also laughing at what was the part Toby Danger? Who was the father?
Oh, I can't remember their names. I gotta pull their names back up, but
But there's like, because the guy who played like the I'm confusing
Venture
like
Brothers.
I'm confusing Venture Brothers and Johnny Quest now, but like the Brock Sampson character,
Yeah.
the fucking name Dash O Pepper,
Dash O
like I lost my mind. I was like, this is so fucking great. Like, this is insane.
I'm trying to look
but then
them all up now.
what was it? There was the part where like they get they're like on they live on like a floating island, and it like smashes into the sea, and then they get on these like movable. It's like a sidewalk. It's like a floating sidewalk.
Yeah, I think they
and
actually
Toby
just call
Danger
it our
asks,
movable
he's like,
sidewalk. Yeah.
yeah. Like Toby Danger asks, he's just like, he's like, hey Dad, did you create these like when like you know did you create this like for some reason? And Dad just like looks at him and he goes, oh, I created this when he like paused for a minute and like had like it was almost like a deep serious like, oh, what have I done? And he's just like, oh, I created this when I created the technology that destroyed your adopted sister Sandra's like this technology killed your entire adopted sister Sandra Danger's like hometown and all of her family.
Right.
And she just like, without a beat, she just goes, I don't look at it as losing a family, or she goes, I don't look at it as like losing a hometown. I look at it as gaining a family. And I was like, oh my God, I fucking love this. Like, this
yeah,
is
that was
insane.
pretty hilarious.
I don't know what it is about like somebody going through like something terrible and tragic, but still maintaining such a positive outlook on life that they're just like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I'm perfect. Like that cracked me up.
Yeah, apparently, so I'm just doing a little bit of quick research on it. I don't know how vetted this is, but apparently Toby Danger wasn't originally created for Freakazoid. It was a guy named Tom Minton who was a writer for Animaniacs. He liked doing parodies of other cartoons. He did one that parodied like Mighty Mouse, and he also had an idea for Johnny Quest. And they just didn't know where to put this one, so it was storyboarded. It was ready to go. They just didn't know where to put it. So it wasn't until Freakazoid kind of popped up, and they were just like, "Oh, it's like a variety show. Let's just put that together in there."
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that came from. I don't know if they ever did any more of them, but I absolutely loved that. I thought it was hysterical, and it was a nice precursor to Venture Brothers, which took it way further. But I love the fact that they kept that like '60s era Hanna-Barbera style of the visuals too. And obviously they had fun with the names, but they kept that visual style too, so that was pretty cool. I like that. Would you recommend Freakazoid just for that short alone, or would you tell people to go seek out Toby Danger just by itself?
I would seek that out and then take a pass on the rest, to be honest.
You hurt me deep in the soul and the heart. I thought you guys were going to like this one. I'll find
one
that you actually like one of
I'd
these
say
days.
Actually, my recommendation would be just to watch episode 2.
Sure.
Because that had I'm not going to say the name.
You already
I'm
did.
that
It's
dumb. I'm
already
not
there
going to
with a
get
lot of
fooled
rope.
into it this time.
Yep.
Because that had Candle Jack in it, and it also had the Toby Danger segment, or the first Toby Danger segment. I think that was I think that's worth the watch. I mean, if you like sort of the non sequitur, that'll also give you an exposure to Cosgrove and sort of just how he interacts with the rest of with the rest of the show and that dynamic that he has with Freakazoid. So yeah, watch episode 2. If you watch episode 2 and you're just like, yeah, I'm into this, like, yeah, maybe go back, watch the first episode, continue watching. But I mean, I'm glad I watched episode 2. Episode 1 was so much of a clusterfuck for me. I just too many cringe moments.
Fair enough. So that's a pretty
episode 1 was a bit of a long walk for me as well. I'll agree with you there.
Fair enough. I'm still going to recommend it because I loved it as a kid. I enjoyed going back to watch it.
Classic Dave.
Yeah, well, I'm the host, so you do what I say. So I liked the first 2 episodes. I found out during the research, like I said, that Norm Abrams was in an episode. That will make me laugh till the day I die. So I went and watched that episode too. So that is actually, I believe, the last episode of the 24 Freakazoid shows that we're on. So if you're a fan of Norm Abrams and his woodwork up there at the New Yankee Workshop, then check out Norm Amadeus. It's amazing. Because it's not, I mean, it's just him, man. I don't know, it sounds exactly like him. I'm not 100% sure if he did the voice or not, but it sounds and looks exactly like him, and it's amazing. He has a great couple of moments in there. So I'm gonna recommend it. But that's 1 out of 3, so you guys trump me on this one. Listeners, let us know if you remember it fondly or if you absolutely hate it. I'm curious. You know what else I was curious about? Rule 34. I'm gonna say do not do that search. There's a lot of weird stuff. The show's pretty weird.
Yeah, I saw some weird shit when I was on Tumblr today, posting a bunch of stuff. Thankfully, I did not reblog any of that because that would have been weird as hell.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Anything else from Freakazoid from you guys? I'm disappointed, but it's okay. We'll carry on. Anything else from you guys?
I like from watching a lot of the stuff that's like a lot of the GIFs that I posted today.
Yeah.
Like there were some really funny moments about it. Like I'm kind of curious to go and like maybe watch like a clip episode.
Yeah,
or,
like Matt said with Cosgrove, maybe there's like a best of or something out there. That's
Yeah, I think there is one on YouTube. I mean, well, actually, there's a couple on YouTube. I mean, it's good because it really is the highlights of it. So it's like, you're not going to get any storyline elements there, but it's good laughable moments.
I gotta say, speaking of non sequitur, why the fuck is there a picture of Totally Spies on our Tumblr page right now? What is happening?
Shut up!
I'm just
Somebody had said like, because I follow a lot of cartoon stuff, and somebody had said like, please tell me that I'm, the title of it says, "Tell me I'm not the only one who remembers these 3 bad bitches," and it's a picture of the 3 ladies from Totally Spies.
Got it.
I absolutely remember. I used to watch Totally Spies all the time.
See, I don't know that one now. I only knew it was Totally Spies because of the tag that's on it. Yeah. So I was very confused. Yeah. I'm very confused. So, but at least
Totally Spies was a very fun. I mean, I remember it being like it sort of was like a precursor to like Kim Possible, like on Disney Channel. Like so, yeah. It was just.
Hey man, put it on the list.
Yeah, put it on the list.
Sweet. Awesome. All right, that's pretty much all the time we have for Freakazoid. I'm sure the guys are happy to hear that one. Put it behind them. I'm going to give them a chance now to plug some stuff that they've got coming up, stuff that they actually like. So let's start with Sean. What do you have coming up, buddy? Anything for the listeners to come check you out in?
I'm actually, if you're in the DC area, I think it is as a part of DC Shorts, I'm going to be premiering a movie that we are going to be preparing and writing in, I think it's like, we've got like 4 or 5 days to be able to put it together. I think it'll be premiering November 21st. I'll put more information available on the website. And then I have a bunch of shows that are going to be available or coming up in December at Source Theater as a part of Washington Improv Theater's upcoming holiday run called Seasonal Disorder. You can find out more information on WIT's brand new website, which is witdc.org.
I like it. Like Sean said, we're going to have all that information up on our site, and you can go check it out, check him out. That's a lot of stuff, buddy. Baron, why don't you balance him out and tell us what you're going to be doing the next couple of weeks?
You
nothing.
Yeah, there it is. Balanced.
Chilling.
The world,
Chillin'.
the world is balanced. As for me, if you listened to last week's episode, you heard my good buddy and sometimes boss, Steve Weintraub, on the show here from Collider.com. Guess what, folks? I still review some shows over at Collider.com. The holidays will
Hey
not
Dave,
stop
what
us.
shows do you
Oh,
review?
buddy, I'm so glad you asked, because I know you watch these shows too, and you kindly read
I watch
my
all of
reviews.
I watch all of them except for one.
Ah, which one?
I don't watch The Walking Dead.
What? Wow. I'm surprised.
I'm just not watching it.
Are
right
you
now.
just worried that
I'll-
Emmett
I'll-
Neverend is going to show up and just creep
No,
along?
oh God! I'll catch up on it eventually. I'm watching the other four.
Oh, I gotcha.
A lot right now.
Fair enough. Hey,
I don't have
listeners out
infinite
there,
amount of time.
As a you and me both. Listeners, as a non sequitur again, send Sean all the pictures of Emmett Neverend you can find and just flood
God
his
damn
Twitter
it. Why
account
the fuck would you do
and his email
Dick.
and his house if you know where he lives, his mailbox.
Do not send that
dress
to my
as
house.
Emmett Neverend, with or without pants on, and show up at his place. Back to my shows. If you want to check out reviews on Gotham, The Flash, Arrow, The Walking Dead, and Constantine, you can check me out and my reviews over at Collider.com. If you want to know more about the show, please visit us at SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. Again, that's morning with a U. If you want to check out Totally Spies and all kinds of Freakazoid stuff on our Tumblr page, where Sean's been doing a real good job, that's SaturdayMorningCartoons.tumblr.com. You can send Emmett Neverend gifts over to us on Twitter at MorningTunes. You can also flood our email box, SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. And guess what, guys? If you're listening to this podcast right now or maybe watching it on YouTube, you can also subscribe week to week. Oh, plus our new mini episodes, which we just started this week, and hopefully we'll keep doing those just to kind of tease the podcast that's coming up. So you can subscribe week to week on iTunes and Stitcher. That's about it for me. Sean, you want to tell the folks what's coming up next week? Because I do believe it is your pick.
Oh man, well, I'll ruin the acronym for everybody. Next week we're going to be watching Mobile Armored Strike Command, otherwise known as Mask.
How about that?
Yes.
This is one that I've heard a lot about, but I honestly don't remember too much about it. I know people are like rabid fans for this, but I don't remember it, so I'm looking forward to checking this one out.
This is one I'm excited. This show went 2 seasons. I mean, like everything else that we've talked about, especially last week with Thundercats, like this show existed to fucking sell toys, and the toys that they had for this show were awesome.
Really?
Like they were so much fun. Like I think I had 2 of them maybe. It was just a blast. Like, they were always like vehicles, and the vehicles always transformed into like these crazy, awesome weapons. Like, I'm not remembering what the name of the one character was, but it was like the main guy from the good guys. It was
You
bad
got
guys
me, brother.
were
I don't know
bad
anything
guys are
about this.
bad guys are part of Mask. The bad guys were part of Venom. The good guys
yes.
were part of Mask.
Okay.
And in part of Mask, there was one that like this dude had it was like a Mack truck, and like the Mack truck, like the back of it opened, and there was like a missile silo that was in the back of it. I had that toy, and I was so excited when I got it. So it was like whatever Christmas that was, like 86 or something like that. Like it blew my mind. I was so pumped about it.
Cool,
so
man. We'll have toy
I remember
talk
watching
next
this
week,
show
too.
finally. Yeah, exactly. I am curious if this is going to hold up against my 6, 7, 8-year-old memories.
I don't know.
So
Matt, did you watch the show at all? Because I mean, like I said, I know a lot of people like to watch it and talk about it, but
I did not watch this one bit.
this will be interesting. Then it'll be 2 newcomers and a toy freak, so it'll be good times.
Yep.
Yup. Speaking of Sean, we're going to let him take us out for this show. So, again, this has been Saturday Morning Cartoons. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.
Dave, Baron, we ride!
Hello, and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from cyberspace, I'll be your host, Dave Trumbore. And joining me as always, he runs around in underwear, it's Sean Paul Ellis. How are you underwear-wearing fiend?
David. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I wish we were doing a video cast right now because he's literally just running around in underwear, ladies and gentlemen. It's a
I
delight.
am. Why
Yes.
would you not?
Yeah.
Look, I am in the confines of my own home.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get comfortable.
No, do what you
I'm gonna
want.
get comfortable.
Yeah. Good stuff.
I'm uncomfortable.
Ooh, and completing our trio. His brain's overloading and it has a chocolate coating. It's Matt Barron. How's it going, buddy?
I'm good.
He's got chocolate coating, everyone. So we got Naked Sean running
Delicious.
around. Near Naked Sean. He's not an ever near,
Yeah.
as far as I know. And chocolate coated Matt Barron. This is a delightful little episode. We're obviously talking Freakazoid because that's about as random an intro as we can have. And this is about as random a show as we've watched so far. I don't know how the guys feel
I
about
want
it yet,
to. I want to.
jump in.
Hey, Dave, Matt. Since
Yeah.
this show is completely based on non sequiturs, at any point during this episode, if somebody just wants to non sequitur and just start talking about whatever else is on their mind and something completely different, I'll allow it.
Oh fuck, that's gonna drive me insane.
I'll support it.
I'm kind of OCD-ish for folks that don't know me, so that will literally drive me insane. We're gonna watch
You know
the
what you
show
have to do
in
now, Baron.
Relaxovision. How's that sound?
No.
Scream. No, we're gonna watch in Relaxovision.
Oh man.
It's gonna be great. Before Sean starts his non sequiturs, I'm gonna give you guys a brief history of Freakazoid, which you may not be familiar with. I'm actually kind of surprised by. I don't know, this was a big thing to me in the mid-90s. I thought more people liked it. Apparently not so much. So if you're not familiar with it, Freakazoid was an American animated TV series created by...
Brown in underwear
Freakazoid. Freakazoid.
rescues Washington, D.C.
Freakazoid. Freakazoid.
unless there's something better on TV.
Freakazoid. Freakazoid.
His brain's overloading. It has a chocolate coating. Textbook case for Sigmund Freud.
Freakazoid. Freakazoid.
Check out Dexter Douglas, nerd computer ace, when surfing on the internet and was zapped into cyberspace. He turned into a freakazoid. He's strong and super quick. He drives the villains crazy because he's a lunatic. His home base is the Freakalair.
Freakazoid. Fricassee.
Floyd the barber cuts his hair.
Freakazoid. Chimpanzee.
Rides around in the Freakmobile.
Freakazoid. Freakazoo.
Hopes to make a movie deal.
Freaka me. Freaka you.
He's here to save the nation, so stay tuned to this station. If not, we'll be unemployed.
Freakazoid. Freakazoid. Freakazoid.
Wonderful.
Very well done.
Wonderful.
Applause. Very well done. Sean, I am excited to get into this theme song conversation with you and Matt because there are a number of things that I love about it. But I know you have an ongoing theory about how theme songs kind of set up the potential for the show and give the viewers some information. So how do you feel about this particular Emmy-winning theme song?
I feel actually pretty good about it. I mean, I have to amend this or at least caveat this and say that like the promise that the theme song makes is in no way indicative of whether or not you're going to enjoy the show.
Right.
It's just whether or not the theme song actually delivers on the promise. And in this instance, yes, it absolutely.
Glad we get to watch it again. But to tell you what the show was actually kind of about, I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and I'll stop my rambling.
Thank you. So the title character in here, Freakazoid, has an alter ego that is a 16-year-old boy named Dexter Douglas. He's a high school student. He seems to be pretty poor with the ladies, but Freakazoid seems to continually, I don't know, kind of quest after like makeouts or kisses
Boy,
on the
does he.
cheek.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I guess this is what's interesting to me. And I know that we've kind of done like internet timelines before, especially when we discussed Reboot. But I mean, this show came out in 1995. Dexter Douglas gained his powers from a computer bug, which sucked him into the internet and sucked him into the computer and gave him all of the information that is on the internet at that time.
Right.
We've talked about this. like commercial internet had only been around for like a couple years at that point. So like what, he gained a bunch of like AOL chat rooms, a bunch of spinny GIFs, angelfire.com,
Yeah.
GeoCities,
Some
like
cat pictures.
he
the
gained
very first
he
cat
gained the
pictures.
garbage of the internet
Yeah.
that like we are trying to still now bury.
Well, dude, it's no
Like,
wonder his brain was fried. I mean, good lord, cramming all that junk in there.
Well, I mean, I guess the point that I want to make with this is that there really wasn't enough. Like at that point in time, you could still write down a majority of the IP addresses for the internet on a piece of paper and pass it to a person.
Right.
And like, it wasn't ridiculous. Like, ugh. So, you know, whatever. That was the best Matt Barron laugh ever. So, you know, he has, along with the ability to have all the information that's on the internet, which comes across in all these pop culture references, he has enhanced strength, endurance. He has speed. There's no sanity in terms of like what he does. Like it bounces
No, there's
around.
no right. Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, names you may recognize, for the Kids WB programming block on the WB, the kind of defunct turned into CWWB. This was an Amblin Entertainment and Warner Brothers Animation production. Also involved Steven Spielberg, which was kind of fun. It was the third animated series that involved Mr. Spielberg. This was kind of during the late 80s and early 90s when kids animation was definitely making a big comeback. So I mentioned Bruce Timm earlier. You probably know him, one of the big players in DC Animated Universe. This was his creation, but he actually intended it to be kind of a straightforward superhero action adventure with a little bit of comic flavoring. But Spielberg came in and was just like, nope, we're going to take the guy that wrote Animaniacs. His name's Tom Ruegger. And we're just going to turn this into a crazy bonkers comedy, which is exactly what happened. I don't think it would have done, well, it didn't do well, let's say that. It didn't do well in its original run. It developed kind of a cult following and, just kind of a cult hit in later years. But during its original run, numbers weren't so great. So it's hard to say whether or not that was a good decision or not. The styling of the show is just, it's surreal. There's slapstick, they break the fourth wall a lot. There's a little bit of satire, but there's a lot more kind of the parody, and we can talk about kind of the differences between those two. There's a lot of pop culture references, but they were specific to pretty much the time of the mid-90s when this ran. The series was one of the first to debut on the new Kids WB Saturday morning block, September 9th, 1995. It lasted for 2 seasons, 24 episodes, finishing up on June in 1997. And like I said,
that's pretty reasonable.
It's not
That's
bad.
pretty-
I mean, in
that's pretty respectable.
24 episodes, I think that's pretty good. And honestly, like, these shows were so crazy, they probably just burned through all their goodwill because it seemed like they did not give a shit. They just did whatever they wanted to do, which is why I love these shows. And once the reruns showed up on Cartoon Network a couple of years later, that's when people started to kind of like pay attention to it. It kind of came into its own in that time when like Family Guy was being revived on Cartoon Network, and there were just some more kind of bonkers shows on that cable network. So I'm glad that it found a place, and I'm glad Maurice.
So much. Yeah, like, I mean, I don't have like an attention problem at all. And I was sitting here watching this, paying attention to the show, and I was like, oh my God, maybe I do now have an attention problem.
It gave
from watching
all
this
the kids,
program.
ADD.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Ugh. It's like those shows that when you start up and they're just like, this show contains flashing lights, it may cause epilepsy, and you're like, oh, I'm fine. And then it starts flashing, and you're just like, oh no, I think something's wrong with me.
Oh,
Like,
no, now I definitely have epilepsy. Yeah.
yeah, thank you for the disclaimer. Now I have that problem.
Yeah.
You know, so he continues to fight on the side of the good and the just. You know, and so I mean, I guess he's a redeemable character in that sense. But along with being somewhat redeemable, I know I've mentioned this before, is that how important the theme songs are, at least how important I posit the theme songs to be. This show actually really does have a great theme song.
Absolutely. And before we even get into that, I just want to mention this show was actually nominated for a Daytime Emmy in 1998.
What?
Yeah, based on an outstanding original song from composer Julie Bernstein and lyricist composer John P. McCann. I don't think it was for the title song. Wikipedia says it was. Yes, they actually won a Daytime Emmy in '96 for the original song, and they were nominated again in '98 for a song called Invisible. But yeah, this main
Really?
theme
Wow.
won a Daytime Emmy, which just goes to show you how shitty and worthless Emmys are. So, that being said, I'll turn it back over to
If you
Sean.
stand on top of the pile of shit, you're still the king, right?
Exactly. But now I'm going to turn
And
it
you're
over to
still
you
standing.
guys.
You're still standing on shit at that point.
Hey, at least
so
you're standing,
not that great.
kids. At least you're still standing.
Well, that's
All
why
right.
the daytime Emmys are shit.
Matt, I'm going to do this reading. Would you mind helping me out?
I would love to help you, Sean.
Wonderful. Super teen extraordinaire
Freakazoid.
runs